Good evening, everyone. It's Saturday, 5th of January 2013. We're going to have a little session this evening on anatomy and physiology, specifically looking at the vascular shunt mechanism, or otherwise known as the redistribution of cardiac output. So the main theme of this session is we want to know, if I draw in a pretty little heart there, we want to know where does the blood go from the heart, and by the blood of course we mean the cardiac output, the quantity of blood leaving the left ventricle per minute. Where does it go to during resting and exercise conditions? Well, first of all, let's just look at a very, very simple illustration. During rest, we have the vast majority of our cardiac output being directed towards the general or other tissues of the body, and a small proportion of that cardiac output being directed to the muscle tissue. So we're saying that by far the vast majority is going, nice thick line there, is going to the rest of the body or to other tissues. But if we begin to exercise, this situation reverses, and we find that during exercise the vast majority of cardiac output is redirected towards the muscle tissue or towards skeletal muscle, and that only a small proportion of cardiac output is directed towards other tissues. So the question is, how does this process occur? How do we shift the direction of the blood we are ejecting from the heart from other tissues to the muscle tissue? And that's what we're going to try and answer today by looking at the vascular shunt mechanism. And you need to be able to present that there are two primary mechanisms that allow this process to operate. And those two mechanisms are initially that we have the vasodilation, so I'm writing it here, and vasoconstriction. So just about fit in. Of arterioles, which I'll explain in more detail in a moment, of arterioles. But also that we have the vasodilation, which is a long old word, and vasoconstriction of pre-capillary sphincter muscles. And the main question we need to answer is, what are they and what do they do? And we'll answer that right now. Before we do though, let's just quickly make sure we understand that vasodilation means that the blood vessel, in this case in point one of the first primary mechanism, the arteriole, opens or widens or broadens. That dilation means the opening of that particular vessel, whereas vasoconstriction means the closing of the vessel or of the muscle. So we might describe, or we might indicate, that a vasodilated arteriole has that diameter, whatever that is, but the arteriole which is vasoconstricted is closed down and has a much smaller diameter, whatever size that one is. So here we are with mechanism one, and what we're going to have a look at here is how the arterioles vasoconstrict and vasodilate. Now, remembering that arterioles lead towards capillary beds, so that's their job. They carry blood from main arteries to the capillary beds of different tissues. And we see over here in the three examples we have in this image, in A, B and C, that in A we have a vasodilated arteriole, so that of course reduces the pressure within the arteriole and allows for greater blood flow through that vessel. So during exercise this might be represented with something like muscle tissue, because we would expect that the arterioles are leading to the muscles which are working would vasodilate, allowing greater blood flow to those muscles. Whereas, for example, during exercise to other tissues, we would have this notion of vasoconstriction, as we see in the image here, increasing the pressure within the blood vessel and therefore preventing a significant flow of blood or caloric output to the other tissues of the body. And what we actually have here in point B is what we call normal vascular tone, or what I might consider resting conditions for muscles which, for example, maintain posture. And it's a really important point in this, because we actually say that whatever level of excitation the muscle, which of course is what we've got surrounding these arterioles here and here, we describe the level of tension within that muscle as the vasomotor tone. The level of contraction of the muscle within the arteriole. So of course in the dilated muscle the vasomotor tone is lower, and of course in the constricted vessel the vasomotor tone is higher, and therefore we have a greater constriction of that vessel. And here we have mechanism 2, which we described earlier, of course, as the precapillary sphincter muscles, a word I know you really like that word, so I'll keep saying it in a nice sort of pronounced way. But what we're trying to describe here is the process by which muscle or rings of muscle around the entry to the capillary beds can either constrict, which of course we know is the vasomotor tone increasing, or they can dilate, vasomotor tone decreasing, as I described just now. And that of course prevents or allows more or less blood flow through the capillary bed, allowing for greater or less gaseous exchange or diffusion to take place between the capillaries and the tissues. So what we see here in these illustrations, of course, is here, I'm doing this a different colour here, here we see these rings of muscle just here around the entrance to the capillary network of a tissue. And we might say here, what we have is during exercise in our first illustration up here, let's get rid of that there, if I get rid of all my little green marks as well, we have here a muscle tissue bed during exercise. So what we find is that the sphincter or circular muscles surrounding the capillary entrances, they are vasodilated, open. The vasomotor tone is low, allowing greater blood flow and therefore exchange at the muscle tissue during exercise. Whereas here at the other tissues or other organs, we have a situation where the precapillary sphincter vasomotor tone is higher, and therefore we experience vasoconstriction in these muscles. And of course we see now that all of these networks are closed off, and therefore the blood is literally shunted through. I'm going to do that in a different colour. Let's try orange. The blood is shunted through the tissue and back to the heart to increase venous return, maintain venous return, and therefore less diffusion actually takes place and greater blood is redirected towards the muscle tissue, which of course experiences lower pressure or lower resistance because of the dilation of the precapillary sphincters. So, to recap, we must be able to talk about those two primary mechanisms. Firstly, the arterioles, which vasodilate, going towards the working muscle during exercise to allow greater blood flow, greater cardiac output delivery, or they vasoconstrict towards the other tissues to prevent excessive blood delivery or cardiac output delivery to other tissues during exercise. Secondly, mechanism 2, we have the precapillary sphincters, which vasodilate the capillary bed around the muscle tissue and vasoconstrict around the muscle, around the other tissue capillary beds, preventing blood flow and shunting blood through the other tissues back to the heart and redistributed to the muscles. So guys, an important topic of this one was last June 2011. Okay, that might not sound too long ago, but it's only ever been examined once on this paper. So we want to know this, make sure we have an awareness of this, because it's one of those, it's a popular topic. People like to sort of revise it. It's fairly accessible, and it might just crop up in your exam. So make sure you are aware of it. I'll be back tomorrow with another revision session. Until then, have a nice weekend. Goodbye.